No, there was a few new washaways and things, but we managed to miss most of them.
All eyes were focused on the leading pair, but there was still plenty going on behind. Chagger was third fastest. It was enough to overhaul the horses and move him up into fifth overall, and he was now focused on chasing down Perez for fourth. Steve Perez was fourth fastest, losing 20 seconds to Chagger, and the heat was on. Gregoire de Mervius was fifth fastest. He had climbed up to eighth overnight, but the gap to Lloyd was too great, and unless the escort hit problems, he would finish in eighth. Jeff Bell was on full attack once again. However, as he lined up the gap between these Murram stacks, he hit one of those unmarked washaways. It was a massive accident as the car somersaulted into the air, landing back on its wheels. Thankfully, the crew were unscathed, but a small fire started in the engine bay. Teammate Andrew Siddle stopped to hand over a fire extinguisher. Despite this, the Englishman set the seventh fastest time. It moved him back into 11th overall, where he would finish. A great comeback after his early problems. At the start of stage 2, the tension was mounting.
Not really down to the last stages normally in this rally, but we are going for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's just a bit stressful, but it's all right.
The kilometres were running out, and overnight rain meant the stage would be slippery in places. Duncan was first into the section, and we ride on board with him as he tackles the fast ranch roads. The pressure was showing, and he made a mistake. Overshooting this junction, the car stalled, and he lost time. The car then stalled on this junction, and his lead was gone. Blomqvist was second away. Chasing after his rival, he must have been excited to see Duncan's skid marks. Going for broke and realising he had an opportunity, he flew and was faster by 47 seconds and now held a 36-second lead with one stage to go. Marcy must have felt like he was in a vortex. The Belgian was quietly going about his business. With an 11-minute cushion to Perez, all he needed to do was finish to secure the last podium spot. He had driven brilliantly, staying within the limits of the car, and well deserved his third overall position. Steve Perez still held over 2 minutes on Chagger and went fifth fastest. With the pressure mounting, he was then second fastest on the final stage. Fourth overall was a brilliant result for the Amigos driver, and he was also the highest placed Datsun. Further back, the top 10 positions were settling down. Chagger went third fastest to consolidate fifth and open a gap on the horses. The Kenyan crew would be delighted to finish fifth overall after splitting the driving on their first classic event. The horses were content to back off. Happy with 6 overall, they'd met their target and were delighted with the result. It had been a great drive by both David and Alex, who had also shared stages on each day. John Lloyd was delighted to finish in 7th overall. The Viking escort had on the whole performed brilliantly, and he would finish as the top Ford in the event. De Mervius had briefly led the event, but once again was denied a higher finish by mechanical failure. 8th was a great result, but he knew in his heart that he should have been in the battle for victory. Manveer Bayan made it 4 Kenyans in the top 10, with another well-deserved 9th place. The Porsche had not missed a beat, and the crew had had a fantastic event. Rounding out the top 10 was another Tuthill-built Porsche in the hands of Patrick van Herk. The crew had driven steadily and had gradually climbed up the leaderboard for a well-deserved 10th position.
Viz.
The tension at the end of the final stage was incredible. The Tuthill team bosses and Ian Duncan's crew waited nervously for their drivers to emerge at the final control point. Duncan was the first to arrive. He had given it his all, and now it was in the hands of the gods. All he could do was wait for the Porsche to arrive and see what Blomqvist's time was. As the minutes ticked by, it became apparent that Blomqvist had hit problems. This was confirmed by Jeff Bell, who had hitched a ride in a helicopter. Blomqvist had punctured, and it was all over. Ian Duncan had snatched victory on the very last stage of the event, after leading in the morning before losing it on the second stage. In the end, the margin was 3 minutes and 14 seconds, but this did not reflect the titanic battle between the two crews.
Yeah, well,
Hey,
as long as the car will get back to the finish, looks pretty good, yeah.
that's awesome, man. Must be nice to repeat your 2009 victory.
Yeah, it was getting really harder and harder, so we're lucky. It's probably the only one who got the puncture and everyone was flat out, so it's...
Well done, Ian.
We've had enough punctures, so it's
We'll see you.
As Blomqvist arrived at the final control, the disappointment was written all over his face. Bad luck struck him at the worst possible time, and that first victory in Africa that was so close had slipped through his fingers again. It had been an incredible battle between two drivers, but there could only be one victor. As the crews returned to the Sarova White Sands Hotel for the finish ramp and celebrations, there was much to reflect on. It had once again been an incredible African adventure. With so many twists and turns, the start felt like a lifetime ago. Ian Duncan mounted the finish ramp to the rapturous roars of Kenyans across the country. The 2009 champion had retained his crown and brought the glory back home. It was an incredible victory for the small Kenyan team against the might of the big works teams, and was undoubtedly the toughest win of his career. There would be time to reflect later, but in this moment, it was all about spraying the victory champagne.
Champagne. Leo nimeogesha champagne. Champagne.
I told him to say that I told us to send it. I mean, you asked me number 10. Yeah, I did.